All right, good evening and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Danae Aber. I'm the Healthcare Innovation Manager with Well Ahead Louisiana. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today's webinar is the first in our Telehealth in Practice webinar series presented by Dr. Ted Hudspeth, and we'll talk about many reasons why you should develop a telemedicine practice. Your line should be muted to prevent background noise. However, please feel free to enter questions into the Q&A box at any time during the presentation. We're going to try to answer some of those throughout, and then any we don't get to during the presentation we'll answer at the end. Today's session is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be available on our website at walpen.org/telehealth. And with that, I will hand off to Tracy Ingram, who's going to introduce Dr. Hudspeth for us.
Hi, everybody. This is Tracy Ingram. Welcome to the Telehealth in Practice webinar. I'm really excited to get this series started. Many of you may have seen Dr. Hudspeth's presentation at our annual Rural Health Workshop, and that got such a good response and good feedback that we had funders that asked us if we would contact him to do a webinar series. So here we are with the webinar series with Dr. Hudspeth to help providers across Texas and Louisiana to start telemedicine in their clinics. For me, it's a personal happiness because I happen to have known Dr. Hudspeth for several years as is my own personal physician, and just by sheer kismet over the years, we both had a tremendous interest in telemedicine and have been talking about the advent and the progression of telemedicine. And then coronavirus hit, and he, at the same time, became one of the top Ochsner telemedicine people, and that led to the Rural Health Workshop, which led to this. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hudspeth now and let the person with all the knowledge talk to you. Thanks.
Well, that's very kind in giving me all the knowledge label there. You know, I still feel like I am very much a student of this process. And, you know, I'm going to have to learn from you guys because, you know, I'm not in your system. So over this next 16 webinar series that we're going to be doing, we're going to hopefully get to know each other a little bit. We're going to have some polls over all of these sessions to ask you a little bit more about you so you can feedback to me and let me know where you are, who you are, and that type of thing. And hopefully in some of the question and answers that you guys send us, that'll give me a little bit better feedback on the things that you feel you need to know. I've been doing this process of trying to help develop a telemedicine program. Actually, I got involved in early 2018. I had been pushing for our administration to please let me help if you ever get telemedicine at Ochsner. And I think I badgered the right person too many times, and they finally decided to stick me in it, so that which was my wish. So it culminated in me starting to do telemedicine in my practice in 2018, late 2018. Where we started, you know, a pilot. And for 6 months, I was trying to really do it as an urgent care type thing. Well, my practice is exceedingly busy. I have a very large practice of about 3,000 patients. I do 2 full days of endoscopy per week at Ochsner Baton Rouge Hospital. And so I didn't have a lot of free openings. So I really didn't do it the right way. But after a while, I learned that doing more of the chronic care medicine and getting that information out to people that I'm doing this thing, that's where it really started to take off. And after that, actually, I had my entire clinic of 8 providers doing telemedicine by December 31st of 2019. And then we had a pandemic. You know, I think this process would have probably taken me about 5 years to roll this out in our world, both with the primary care and specialties. But within a month, we went from having about 200 telemedicine visits in the entire Ochsner system in February of 2020. The pandemic hit in mid-March. And when we had a full month of data, which was in April, we had over 50,000 telemedicine visits in the Ochsner system. So I'm extremely proud of our pilot that we had done. It was enough to make it workable when we hit, the pandemic. But man, we still have a long way to go to tweak the system, tweak the processes, et cetera. So like I'm saying, the process, I'm still a student. And I wanted to drive home the point to you guys that you are absolutely not too late to this process. We are still very much in the infancy of telemedicine. And I truly believe that if you start trying to implement some of these small steps and going towards doing this in your practice, it will really be something that will be a very wise investment for you and for your patients. So I hope to be able to share my knowledge of what I've learned over the last several years in this webinar series. I'm excited that you're joining us, whether you're doing it live or doing it later. This hopefully will be a very, very good thing for you. And I cannot thank, man, Danae, your site, your website that we will give you the link to at the end of this. That website is phenomenal, guys. They are going to have all of the tools and resources and connections that you are going to need to be able to develop this in your practice. So make sure that you go to that link at the end and give some kudos to Danae. So we'll get started here. As a teaser, I'm going to give you the list of all of the things that we will be going through. Right now, I'm going to kind of move this over. Are you seeing all the screen now? Okay, good. Briefly, we're going to go through why you should develop a telemedicine practice. That's today's presentation. But then we'll talk about choosing a platform, your professionalism and legal considerations that you need to go through, best practices in caring communication. That's so important to have people feel cared for in the virtual space, just like you do in your clinic in a face-to-face type visit. I'll go through workflows, both on the pre-visit workflows, which is, it can be so helpful if you work on this ahead of time with all of your team and get them involved and make a true workflow that works for you. And then your own personal workflow in the visit and after the visit. How do you document? How do you carry a patient through that process? All of that is stuff that I will go through with you, and we will really get down to the nitty-gritty on templates, et cetera, to help you out. I will talk about how I have now expanded my urgent care telemedicine, and more importantly, I think, is the chronic care management piece. That, my friends, is going to be the big ticket in a regular clinic, in my opinion, in the future. This is really where you are going to connect with your patients more than you ever dreamed in that chronic care space. And it's something that you will be able to do and compete with others on in a very good way. Next, we're going to talk about marketing, all the way from social media to direct outreach to your patients that you currently have. We're going to talk about team troubleshooting. So, your nurses are the folks, and the MAs and the front office people. Those are all the people who get them in the visit with you. Well, I've often said that when the pandemic hit, my nurses station quit being a nurses station. It sounded like a tech upstart company out in California. I mean, they were talking about, you got to go to your website and download this app and, all that stuff. So I'll go through some of those verbiages and things that they talk to patients about to get them into the visit smoothly. And then I'll talk about value metrics in telemedicine. There are some big things you can do to add to your value metrics for your patients. And also we'll talk about billing at some point. So let's move along. All right, so a little bit about me. I grew up in Amite, Louisiana, rural town, right? So I feel for you guys, or feel like I'm part of you guys, because I grew up in a small town and I know how it is to, see a small town doc. That's why I became what I became. I did get to become part of a very large system. However, I take care of a lot of folks from the rural areas outside of Tangipahoa Parish. From there, I went to Baton Rouge to college where I studied microbiology. And then I went to New Orleans to LSU Medical School, practicing the old charity, right? A lot of my rotations were actually in Baton Rouge at the old Earl K that many of you may have been through. And then over in Lafayette at UMC, University Medical Center. I did a lot of rotations over there. And then I went to Shreveport where I did my residency in family medicine. And they were really bent on procedures, which that's how I ended up doing endoscopy. But I had one mentor there who demanded if I was going to be his mentee, I guess, I had to buy a computer because he was a computer geek. Now, this is back in 1990. I spent $3,000. That was a tenth of my annual salary on a 386 computer. All right. And he started teaching me how to do searches from home in the libraries. We didn't even have the regular internet back then. That was all DOS based. So I credit him. His name is Dr. E.J. Mayu, and he is a phenomenal teacher in family medicine. And then I did a bunch of moonlighting over in Monroe and Arcadia. And the reason I wanted to go through these is, guys, I've been all over this state. Many of you are probably from, areas that I've been around. And I feel really passionate about healthcare in Louisiana itself. Ochsner now has a project where they are trying to bring us from almost dead last in healthcare to 40th by 2030. They call it the 40 by 30 program. And there is no way that we can do this without you guys. So that's why I feel like I'm in such a wonderful position to do what I can to help make your practices more efficient and being able to see patients in a better manner or see them at all, because many people I know have transportation issues, et cetera, and they just can't get to you, so they don't get the care. And I'm very passionate about the fact that this model that we're talking about now is going to allow you to do that, okay? So moving right along, right now, well, for the last, 27 years, I've been practicing in Hammond, Louisiana. I practiced out of North Oaks Medical Center, where I'm on staff, and I do all of my endoscopy over at Ochsner Hospital in Baton Rouge. And my clinic is actually a primary care clinic there in Hammond. So when I wasn't working so much, we had a large family. We built a large family, my wife and I. So we actually have 5 children. This is from this summer. 3 of the others in this photo are wives and better halves now. So I'm very proud. I'm very, very much a family man. So I just feel very blessed that family medicine has led me to this. All right. So the reasons that I invested in telemedicine, and I'm going to call it an investment because an investment is something you have to work for. And I have worked for this, but I had to kind of do a soul search here. Some of them are very personal reasons that benefit me. And that's one that you're going to need to put a big checkbox on to figure out why would it benefit you, okay? There are patient reasons to do telemedicine. There are competition reasons. Your competition is coming after your patients right now. And I'm going to really dive into that in great detail today. I wanted to be able to increase some services, some things that I didn't do before that I can do now. I wanted to have better quality, wanted to lower my costs in my clinic, and I also thought it would grant me some other opportunities. So I want to talk about opportunity itself. The definition of opportunity is when demand outpaces supply. And right now, 71% of millennials want to book appointments via a mobile app. 74% want to see providers virtually. 75% look at online reviews of the providers they're going to see. And 33% have downloaded a health app in the last 30 days. 42% have already used synchronous video to see a provider in telemedicine. But the last that this study was done, only 14% offered digital tools to be able to access information. And 23% of hospitals offered a range of virtual health and telehealth access. 20% had an online price estimation tool, and 43% provided messaging between patients and providers. Now, granted, some of this information is before COVID, but I can promise you right now that there are many people wanting to do telemedicine and just have not had the services offered to them. But once they do have that offered to them, we are in a consumerism market right now, and they will want it if it is easier, more convenient, and less costly if they can get the job done. And telemedicine allows that to happen. So I'm going to go through some personal reasons here. For me, 3 days of my week, I work in a clinic in Hammond. 2 days of my week, I'm in Baton Rouge. I still have 3,000 patients to keep up with. How do I do that? Well, obviously, being able to see patients on the run or on the go or in different places was very important to me. Right now, when I finish endoscopy around 3 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I still have some time that I can log in, see some pre-scheduled patients in telemedicine, and take care of them. Whereas before, I'd have to travel all the way from Baton Rouge to Hammond, get set up in my clinic. My nurses are heading for the door about that time, okay? But now I'm able to do that. I felt like I could expand my patient base. I've had a number of patients who have moved from Hammond, and those patients are now retained. I've said, well, you've moved to wherever. I can still take care of you when you need me to. And they're happy with every now and then coming in for a physical with me. They love that they can keep that established relationship with me. And then I feel like I've been able to reduce emergency room visits. I've been able to see them on the fly and not have them go into an ER at times. I've been able to improve my quality metrics. My efficiency in my office has been better. My nurses don't have to room patients and do all of that kind of thing. So we've been able to actually cut costs from that standpoint. My nurses can do other tasks for the clinic. For me, it's been exciting. So it's helped my burnout. I feel like patients have very much loved that I do this. They feel like it's a service I'm offering to them. And when they love me for doing that, it prevents my burnout. It improves my resilience. Okay. And I have felt that. I really have. Financially, I had no idea a pandemic was coming back in 2018 when I wanted to do this so badly, but it absolutely, helped us mitigate the financial strain that the pandemic imposed on us. So it also has provided me a lot of job security because I'm able to retain my patients. And again, I talked about decreasing our clinic costs. For me, I want to drive home some of these pertinents on the financial part of it. On the high blood pressure and diabetes patients, historically, when I would have a patient change their medication on either one of those topics, I would either have them send me a list of their pressures since then, or have them come and see my nurse and recheck the pressures. Or the glucoses was the same. I'd get a list in my paper inbox on all of that. And then I would evaluate that and I would manage it. That's an E and M. I've historically been doing a lot of work on paper and not being remunerated for this. So think in your own practice, are you doing a lot of that? Well, there is no doubt about it. I mean, that is really something you should be paid for. And right now, when I have someone that I change their medicines on, I offer to them to follow up with me in 2 weeks via telemedicine. They actually are now sending in their vitals that come directly into the chart. I've built a template that pulls all that data when I see them in 2 weeks. And I'm not only evaluating, managing it, and getting paid for that, but it is an incredible opportunity that I've seen big movement on by me having one more touch point to drive home their diet, their exercise. Are they really doing what I asked them to last time? If not, I'm giving them additional tools. And so we've really been able to move the needle on some of the quality with doing that, okay? The same thing for anxiety and depression follow-ups. I was always so busy, I just wouldn't have people follow up unless if they were having problems. Well, now I actually am able to follow up with them and, again, be remunerated for that. I want to ask each of you to think about how much phone medicine you're doing, meaning a phone message comes in and you send in a medicine for them for whatever they're having, a nausea or runny nose or whatever it is. Right now, if you can convert that into a visit, I promise you, you are doing better care than what a phone clerk puts on a piece of paper as far as all the symptoms are concerned. So that's good. And that's going to improve your quality. And I promise you, it improves patient satisfaction. I have a story about one lady that was a diabetic who's been with me a long time. And I asked to see her. And she ended up telling my nurse after the visit that she felt so impressed that I would take the time to visit with her. And she felt like I cared about her sugars. That is a very satisfied patient just because I took the time to visit with her and discuss her diabetes with her. So people want to do these kinds of things, but it's often difficult for them to get to a clinic. So you take the path of least resistance and you just change the medicine. So I just want you to think about those kinds of things and how important it could be for your practice in many different ways. There are patient reasons. The biggest thing I think for them is their time, their transportation, and location. And when you start looking at all of the cost issues or the ways that patients can save on their costs, it ends up being around those type things. Your charge is your charge, whether you're seeing them in the clinic or seeing them virtually. So that's not generally that different, but those other things are. And if you do have some patients that, are very busy in their own jobs, man, they were really willing to pay whatever they have to not have to leave work. So this is a good service to them, and it gives them greater access. Now, your competition, this slide, I'm going to really delve deep through this topic. So bear with me. This page itself is more designed for you to go to later and be a link source to be able to look up all these things on the different major players that I see. But, some big ones are CVS, Walmart, Walgreens, Amwell, and Teladoc are both just in the virtual space only. And then Ochsner. We have both physical space and virtual space. So I'm gonna go through a few of these. The Walmart actually, their strategy right now is to have a 24/7 telehealth plan. But as I will show you a little later, or I'm going to tell you here actually, they're actually outsourcing all of their physician services right now to another company. Okay. But they are currently giving zero costs to patients who are their employees. Walmart employs a lot of people and a lot of people in our region. All right. So there's zero costs for that to those patients, and they're fairly inexpensive for non-employees. Walgreens also, they want to actually be the front door of medicine is kind of how they quote it. The front door of patients coming in and doing their regular healthcare, including getting their prescriptions. So they actually accept HSA and FSA cards, and they don't accept insurance, but some insurance companies will accept claims, so to speak, when you submit it. All right. So they're not that far along into that part of it yet. To me, CVS is further along than many others right now because they're actually offering regular in-clinic visits. So they have hubs, CVS hubs, health hubs, they call it. So you can do that. I'm not going to talk about that at all. I'm going to talk about their virtual offerings because they have something that's called an e-visit. An e-visit would be like their regular clinic. Say they had one, here in my city. A patient would establish with a provider there, and then they would have a preset visit with their provider through telemedicine, much like I would. Okay. And that's a little bit different from their virtual visits. Their virtual visits are really anybody can go to anybody around the country. Pretty much they can log in and see someone. So in these particular consumer video visits, they're $59 a visit, and they are available in 44 states and District of Columbia right now. They are available 24/7, and they see all of your regular, minor colds, sore throats, and all that kind of stuff. and I'm going to go into this part. Let me move. Are you seeing the video, like the pictures up there, or is it just the screen?
We just see your PowerPoint, Dr. Hudspeth.
Okay, good deal. I was worried about you being in the way because you're on the screen. Currently, 82% of Americans live within 10 miles of a CVS. So when you consider that, and you see Louisiana is on that, Texas is also, when you understand that availability, it frightens me. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to be in the televisit space, because I wanted to be able to service my own patients. This is a listing of the common things that they see through those e-clinic services. But I want you to really focus on this right here. You see that chronic care thing right there? This is what ought to scare just about anyone who has a private clinic, because my understanding is the estimation by 2030, I think somewhere around 80% of the healthcare dollar is going to be in chronic care management. And they are going at that square head on, I promise you. But there's not a lot that's said about that right now. So there's not a lot being publicized, but I'm going to go through and show you some of the things that are currently out there. This is directly from their website about showing all of the minor illnesses, and they're very transparent. Patients love to be having transparency, which most clinics do not have that. But these are all the common things that you could do in an urgent care type problem. But from that, you can see they have a lot of wellness services, a lot of sports physicals, DOT physicals, general medical exams, and they do TB testing, all this kind of stuff. They even have weight loss programs, stop smoking programs. These are things that some of you may do in your clinics now. But then they also have some of these other screenings like asthma monitoring and your cholesterol screenings, diabetes screenings, A1C checks. Now, all of that is what I do in my typical primary care clinic all day long. And, you know, I want to make sure that I'm able to service my patient just like anyone else who's going after that business. And they certainly are. These are just some of the high blood pressure treatments and diabetes treatments that they do, and the pricing that's along with that. And obviously, you know, all pharmacies are doing vaccinations right now. And I know many clinics are giving up on doing vaccinations because they're losing the game. It's more costly to keep vaccinations than it is to just have someone go and do it at a local pharmacy. But when you do that, realize that you're opening the door to let patients get other services that these folks are going to start marketing towards. Okay. Not start. There
Dr.
are.
Hudspeth,
Yes.
we're at the 30-minute mark, just FYI.
Thank you for that information. I told Tracy to please keep me on. I'm going to go through that. They're actually doing a lot of women's services now. And they're doing a lot of blood testing. So you can get your A1C tests and all that kind of stuff there. Again, all of this is very open pricing. So they are open to patients seeing that. The next thing is, you know, their video visit services. That's where they can just log on 24/7 and see anybody pretty much in the country that is able to see people in your state. Now, these are all the states that they're licensed in. So your patients can definitely log on and see a provider. 94% of the American population can have a virtual visit at CVS right this minute. So that's big competition, guys. And those are $59 for visits, no matter what your symptoms, okay? I'm going to talk about the increased services that we've been able to do. We have a digital medicine program with both hypertension and diabetes. In this process, patients actually have all of their vital signs go directly from their cuff or their glucometer directly into our charting system. Well, those are things that are codified, and then I can pull that into notes later on, which is so awesome. And then we can manage that. But we have a team behind us, nurse practitioner, PharmDs, health coaches, dietitians, all that kind of stuff we have on that team and can help patients achieve their goals. And that doesn't involve me, which is good. You know, when you are trying to build a panel of patients and you're paid by your panel, you obviously want to have people at work at the highest level of their licensure. Okay. And some of these folks can help out in doing that. I now am able to do a lot of follow-up for my chronic medical problems, which I've already talked with you some about with the diabetes and the high blood pressure. The psychiatric part, I told you about that, doing ADD follow-ups, doing anxiety and depression follow-ups. It's excellent. And I have a little script that I use for patients when I've changed their medicine. I tell them, look, I usually follow this up in about 2 weeks. I don't know if you know, but I now do telemedicine services, and we could do this straight through your phone, like a FaceTime visit. If that's something you'd be interested in, I can get my nurse to set that up for you in 2 weeks. Would you be interested? Bam. I rarely get anyone that wants to come back to the office to see me. So that's been a really nice thing. And then I've done some healthy living planning with patients. You know, I don't need to do a physical on them at that point. I probably did their physical a few months ago, but they want to get healthy, and we go through various things with that. So in quality and access, obviously the hypertension, the diabetes, that's been a really big thing for me because I have so many of those folks in my practice. That has really improved my quality. I was able to achieve my, they call it the Healthy Blue quality standard this year. I've been able to achieve all those quality metrics with the company. And it was directly because of my telehealth follow-up that allowed me to do that easily this year. I also feel like I've been able to improve access to my rural patients. Many of them are elderly. It's very difficult for them to get to me to begin with. It usually involves another family member, taking off of work, etc. So being able to manage them in this venue is awesome. I did find some studies, and I wanted to quote this one. There was 28 patients that were studied for 3 months, and they showed through a telemedicine program, they were able to improve their A1C by 16%, and there was a 4% mean weight reduction in that group. That's a cool thing, you know, to be able to show that kind of data. And I provide the article for you here, so make sure you check it out. For hypertension management quality, this is another one where they actually showed not only high blood pressure, but that they showed improvements in total LDL, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, and glycemic controls in this population that they studied. And there was another study here that showed improved accesses, or improved access to for urgent care problems when they had a virtual rural healthcare clinic. Psychiatry probably has been able to show the biggest improvements in quality and access. They were probably early to the game because it kind of lends itself, you know, you're just talking about things. You're not actually having to examine something, you know. And so the data really is very strong as far as improvements in their outcomes, their access, and costs. So I do provide one listing later on in the program or in the presentation where it's a bunch of articles that you can go and actually look up all the studies that have been done up to a certain date on. So I won't go through that very much, but you can have that in the PowerPoint. There have been studies showing cost reductions. In one, they reduced healthcare costs by 56% and patient travel costs by 94%. They showed an improved patient satisfaction, and this one particular hospital's revenue went up over $100,000 because of their use of telemedicine. That's that big summary slide, so we'll breeze through that. And then for me, you know, the personal opportunity of being able to do this, what I'm doing right now. You know, when you're first to anything, it often, you know, gives you some opportunities to do some really cool things. I feel like I've been blessed because within Ochsner, I've been able to become part of many committees that looked at, number one, quality. You know, how do we do a telemedicine program and be really good at it and provide better care have a good patient experience. I've been part of committees to do that. I'm currently in a committee where we're trying to design templates that could be rolled out to the whole system that would be standardized, but would give really good information and concise information to other people who read your notes. So doing it now is going to allow you to build it like you want it. And, that is, I've always been a builder myself. I feel like if I can be in there in the trenches and form it into what I want it to be and mold it into what I want it to be, I'm going to be more successful than if it's just, brought down from upon high, so to speak. And you all are, as my understanding, you own your own clinic, run your own clinic, and you're accustomed to being in that position. And while it may be seen as a chore to do this, Tracy and Danae are going to be giving you all of the tools that you need to be able to do what you need to do to start this process. So I really invite you to try to share this with other folks in your clinic. We're going to be going through things that are more pertinent to your nurses. And I believe we're going to try and let you know ahead of time that they need to be part of the webinar also on specific webinars. At this point, you kind of need to think yourself about why should you invest in telemedicine? It's the same points I went through for myself. Think about your personal reasons. Why would it make sense for you to be able to do this in your busy day? Why would it make sense for your patient to have this as an opportunity to be cared for because they can't get out of work or they can't get to your place? Or because they really just like you, but you didn't have an appointment available at other times, right? Think about your competition. You may be in a really rural area, but when you realize 94% of the American population can pick up their iPhone and have a visit with a provider, it starts to scare you. And you can provide services to people. They will do it with you if, to me, two things. One, they have had a visit with you before in the real space and they know you. And number two, if they had a great experience with you in your clinic. If you focus on that and have that rapport with people, all of a sudden, access through the telemedicine project will take everything else off the table. They'll do it with you. But our society is moving to where convenience trumps a lot of other things. And it's sad to say, it really is, because that's not how I grew up in the medical field, okay? But that is the way the world is moving. And I want to be part of making sure that I craft my future so that it's more stable. And I think telemedicine will do it. Being able to increase services, doing things that you don't do now, but would be excited to do, you can provide through this medium. We are all going to be paid on our quality, right? All of the health plans and the government are going to quality. And specifically the federal government is getting out of the risk business. So think about that. Right now, the federal government is on the hook for the risk of the care of the patient. As we move into the very near future, they're going to be offloading that risk and are going to be giving the providers a specific amount of dollars. And at that point, you are going to have to manage the patient the best that you can with the dollars you were given. And they are not on the risk on the hook for the risk of the patient's health anymore. We are going to be at risk. So it is incumbent upon us to start thinking about that now and making moves to be as efficient as we can to get the patients the care they need, when they need it, and how they need it. And telemedicine is one thing that we can do to make that happen. So your quality is going to have to improve, or you're going to get money taken off of the table by the insurers and the government. again, going to costs, we've all got to manage our costs in our clinics as tightly as possible. And it is more efficient on our staff when I'm seeing a telemedicine patient. Okay. And then who knows about your own opportunities, where doing something like this is going to lead you into the future. So I think, I had originally wanted this to be very conversational. I had planned with Danae that we were going to banter a little bit back and forth. But when I started realizing the information I had to go through, I just wanted to roll and go. I knew that we would be able to do Q&A afterwards. And so, Danae, have you been collecting any good questions?
I don't see any in the chat at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll and get people to take that, so we can kind of see what the group looks like, how many people are doing telemedicine, and what kind of credentials we have on the call. So I'm seeing an NP that's not doing telemedicine, an other that is doing telemedicine. We've got some physicians. Can you see the results as they're coming in, Dr. Hudspeth?
No, I can't see that.
Okay.
I do see the poll,
Oh, gotcha.
but I don't see the results.
Let's see. Okay, while people are taking that, I'll go ahead and read out the question we just got here.
Okay.
How does it work with adolescents and minor care law with STD screenings?
Adolescents, minors. Well, me in our clinic, we usually have to have a parent, consent for those types of things in our own clinic. So I don't know how that would work in the telehealth space because I haven't done that part, myself. I haven't had that opportunity yet.
Yeah, so my first thought around that adolescent minor care, I'm not super familiar with the laws around that and what you can share and what you can't share. But generally, I think we like to say that it's telehealth is a delivery model, not a type of care. So generally, you follow the same rules, and so you get the same type of consents. And in a telemedicine visit, you would ask the parent to leave the room if you would ask them to leave the room in person and those sorts of things. So that's kind of my first thoughts around that.
Right. And, when I do know that I'm going to be talking to a patient about sensitive topics, I upfront ask them, are you in a room alone? I've started down some histories sometimes, and I'll start asking questions, and then they start freaking out because I'm asking a question and they weren't in the room alone. So I do that as practice now. Danae, you're right. A telemedicine is a platform. So whatever your same standard of care is required in a telemedicine visit versus a regular visit. Specifically, I'll talk about ADD. In ADD treatment, the main physical component that you're needing there is a blood pressure and a pulse. So for me to see an ADD patient, I have worked with every single one of them where they are trained to upload their vitals before my visit. My templates, when I pull that up when I see them, actually pulls that data into the visit. And now I have what anyone would be looking at as far as following that type of medication and the side effects that it can cause. That's the only physical component you need.
So our next question, we are currently using a telemedicine platform, but our rural patients many times don't have good cell service. I can't see rashes, for instance. Sometimes in pediatrics, the child is moving around too much. What do you recommend for that?
Okay, so within our own system, we do asynchronous dermatologic clinic. So patients literally send in their pictures, and then it's evaluated straight from the picture. You will definitely get a better resolution on a photo than you will on a video, just about all the time, even on our own system. Okay. So that's one way to do it. If you have a way for them to securely send you that picture, that's obviously the way you need to go. We have MyChart, which is within our own Epic system. That's a way for patients to securely, not breaking any HIPAA laws, they're able to send those photos in to us.
Yeah, and she says, I sometimes have them send me a cell phone photo, but it's not secure. So we kind of run into
Yeah,
there.
you're going to need to work on your systems. Right now, my understanding with COVID, pretty much anything's on the table now. All the laws are being loosened, I guess, right now.
They're
But
not enforcing.
yeah, they're not
They're not
enforced.
enforcing.
But yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Keep me straight. Um, but that's going to change. I mean, we need to be doing it the right way.
Yeah. Um, so she says, I also feel like I give better care in person. How many of your telemedicine patients do you end up having to see in the office after a call anyway?
I've done two. And amazing, I can pull that out of my hat, right? I've done two. One of them was a lady. It was early when COVID hit, and the lady had a cough, and she said, "And my chest hurts." I said, "Okay." And she had a little low grade fever. So I was having her go through her exam and everything. And I don't know even why I asked her to do this, but she said something about like her chest hurt all the way down to here and down to her epigastric area. So I had her lay on the bed and start pressing her own belly. And when she pressed on her right upper quadrant, she was like, "Ooh, that hurts." I'm like, "What?" Okay, so long story short, I brought the lady in. She had severe tenderness in the right upper quadrant. We ultrasounded her right then. We have an ultrasound unit in my office. She had a hot gallbladder. So we sent her for surgery that day. All right. And I had another similar patient. Now she had right lower quadrant pain. She ended up having a hot appendix. We did an appendectomy on her that night. So, but I brought her to my office first for me to press on her belly. Okay. But those are the only two I've really had to do that I can think of in my like year and a half of doing this now.
And in your experience, how are you getting vital signs from your patients?
Well, we have a program where we actually are having, especially for the ADD patients, because it's critical that I have accurate pressures on those folks for my documentation purposes. For my hypertension patients, it's for their regular high blood pressure that we're following up. We actually bring them to the clinic, have my ancillary nurse check their blood pressure cuff. So we validate it. We've now put in Epic a little button that we can say, we validated this patient's cuff in blah, 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 whatever date it was. Okay. So we can go back and look at that. But from there, I have them check their vitals and they can upload that directly into their app. Their MyChart app allows that. And many apps allow that to happen. And it comes directly into the chart for us to look at later. Did that answer that question? That was.
Yeah, the question was, how do you get their vitals? But it looks like you guys have a mechanism of doing it through your EMR system.
We do, and then if they aren't as savvy as some need to be, to do that, then they tell me what they had, and I'll enter the data so it's codified. It's got to be codified, or we don't get credit for it in our actual encounter. Okay. Now, sometimes my chart allows me to take pictures of the patient, so I'll have them hold their monitor up to the screen. I snap a photo and I'll just drop that into the note. Okay. Do that with their pulse ox.
Guys, it's,
My COVID
sorry,
patient.
10 minutes. We're at the 10-minute mark, and I wanted to make a note, Dr. Hudspeth. There's a discussion about systems and way systems and work and getting that. That is part of this webinar about how to evaluate systems for telemedicine. Is that correct?
Yes, our next webinar will be on how do you pick a tool. So I'm not going to sell you any one particular tool, but I'm going to go through all of the things I feel you really need to look for in a tool. There are things that now my chart and my Epic do that I never dreamed I would want to do or need to do. And so I'll kind of flesh all of those things out for you just to think about. So when you do go to market, you can pick your checklist of things that you need to have and go from there.
Let's see. Thank you very much for your informative presentation. Looking forward to the others.
There you go.
So we do, I see a couple people still haven't answered the poll that we sent, so I'm going to leave that open for just another minute. If you haven't answered that, please do, so we can just kind of get a feel for who we have on the webinar today.
Okay, and I did want to, on this slide, I want to ask everyone to please go to that Well Ahead website, the walpen.org telehealth. That is really where everything is going to be for this series going forward. And you can direct your staff to it to go back and look at a part that maybe you think they need to see or may be interested in.
Yes, and on that website, we'll link the recording and the PowerPoint from today and for all the future sessions as well. And there's also at the bottom of that page, there's a question form. So you can submit questions through there, or you can submit questions to that wellahead@la.gov email address as well. We'll just wait a minute, see if there's any more questions that come through. We have a thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to share the results of the poll. So we looks like of the people who answered, most people are doing telemedicine. Can you see these results, Dr. Hudspeth?
Wow, 86%. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it looks like we have mostly NPs and PAs and MDDO and then some other, which I think we kind of anticipated based on the rural providers. I know a lot of rural providers are nurse practitioners and physician assistants. So that seems right in line.
So let me say here, if there are that many people who are already doing telemedicine, you know, that information can really color my future presentations if I know a little bit more about, you know, what you're using, what you're doing, what pitfalls you're having, or challenges you're having. So if you could somehow maybe submit some of those thoughts to Danae, who can get those to me, it would really be nice to know, because maybe I can be a little bit more focused on what your needs are.
Yeah, you can use the form on the website, on that telehealth webpage. You can submit comments in there about kind of what questions you have, where you'd like us to focus in future webinars in this series, or you can email me directly. We don't have a slide with my email address on it, but I'll read it out for you. It's danae.hebert@la.gov. So DENAE.HEBERT@la.gov. So feel free to email me directly, or you can submit on the form on our website, or you can email wellahead@la.gov. They'll all end up in my inbox, regardless of which one you use. And I will pass that information along to Dr. Hudspeth. All right, and I think that's it. I don't see any additional questions coming in. So thank you guys for joining us. And our next session will be on Thursday, the 28th at 5:30 p.m. same time. And again, we'll be talking about selecting a telemedicine platform and some of the things you should consider in doing that. So thanks and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.